Hey everybody,
Hello, good evening.
it's Amanda,
And Rick,
and we're live.
are we on the right one?
Yep, I'm
Fundamental faith?
fairly certain. I'll
Okay.
double check and make sure. But it's Thursday and it's very, very late for us.
Yeah, well, a little bit, yeah.
Very late. But I was late. It's just been. I was late getting my grocery haul up. I was late getting dinner going, and now we're late doing this. But you know what? We're getting it done.
Yeah.
We're here, and you're here. So thanks for joining us. And hey, Shani, how are you? And
Hello.
I'm going to go ahead and share the link over on Facebook. I hope you have something to say.
She's sharing the link over on Facebook.
Yeah, see, he's never ready. Even when we say you got to be ready, you got to have something to say. He hasn't thought about that yet. So let's see. I'm going to go to the Fundamental Faith group page and just let everybody know we're here. Hello. And so we had a couple of questions that were asked one question that was asked last week. I guess we could briefly touch on the other one if you wanted to. So we said we were going to work on those this week. And of course, if you have any other questions, you can let us know. Lady may cry a little bit because she's getting ready to be fed. So just ignore her because Brianna's working on making sure she gets fed. So
I got a notification.
did you?
We're doing a Bible study.
That's great. I'm glad you got it. So let me just write it in here. Join us for the live Q&A.
Okay, so I guess last week,
Yep.
It was the 25th of October, 2018, 6:52 in the p.m. I tweeted and posted on Instagram, what should we discuss tonight on the Fundamental Faiths Q&A? And I think while we were live, people started putting some questions on. And do you want to do both of them or just the second?
Well, we could the first question that we were asked, which is already past that day.
It really has. That's why I was wondering.
But, I mean, if you still want to know the answer, the first question was participating at Halloween, to do that or not.
Yeah.
So we don't do
don't.
Halloween.
Mm-mm.
Now, we do have a video on it, which I'm going to double check and see where that video is. But we did do a video a couple of years ago, I think, on Halloween and why we don't do it. I mean, so I don't know. I'm not seeing it. I'll find it. I know it's still out there. It exists.
Link it later.
Yeah. But I just want to say that if somebody is interested in that, it is out there and you can find out. Oh, yeah, here we go. So
I was on the Fundamental Home.
you just got to type the Fundamental Home Halloween in the search bar and you can watch the video. It's like
Look at that
12 minutes. We are so much younger there. And it was 2 years ago. And we talk about how we did do it.
2 years really changes.
You know what? I'm going to say I look younger now. Look
Yeah.
at that was me last week, and that was me then.
You look fine.
I look great.
I look kind of different.
Just a side note. I mean, hey, I feel like I look good.
Yeah.
So, so anyway, that video exists. Hey, Mimi, how are you? And I'm saying hello to everybody else too. I just happened to see Mimi's thing pop up right when I turned over. So we don't do it. What we have done for years is I was just gonna say that, Jessica. What we have done for years was on Halloween night we would put up our Christmas tree.
Yeah.
But we didn't put up a Christmas tree this year, which you can see behind us. It's not there, and I don't believe we're going to put one up.
Oh, that's not true. That's not true. The reason
It's still in discussion.
there really is no discussion. The reason the tree did not come up or go up on my end of it is because this Christmas we have a cat in the house. And we did a Fundamental Home Live event a month or two ago. And I got up, yeah, I'm going to put the tree up and talked about doing a live event and all this kind of stuff, putting the tree up and such. And then somebody in the comments during the live event said, well, what about the cat? And I didn't even think about it. And then the next day I was at work. And you know how your wheels start turning? And I started thinking, what about that cat? that cat will be all up in the tree, you know. So I haven't yet figured out what's the solution between tumbleweeds and the tree. So I'm still saying I'm still pro tree. I'm just hesitating greatly because I know it's going to end up probably being a frustrating situation. So there you go.
However, I will add, in case you're curious, this is one of those conversations where Rick and I aren't entirely in agreement.
Sure.
So which is funny because the next thing we're going to talk about is marriage. But you know, even when you're married, you still
you don't
agree
have to
on
agree
everything.
on everything.
But we are not in agreement on the tree situation. I
Right.
would prefer to not have a tree. I've
True.
actually talked about that. I've been very vocal about that.
Yeah.
On this channel and on the other channel.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather do no tree and not do Christmas, personally. But Rick's the head of this house. So, there we go. We'll have a tree at his discretion. But there's what that is. So, let's see.
But if we didn't do Christmas, it would be odd me listening to old Bing.
You can enjoy Bing if you wanted to.
Oh my.
You can enjoy Bing. You can have like a nice bowl of soup.
Oh,
like
you're fine. You're fine.
You can put on like, you know, a little, I don't know, whatever you want.
We
Something cozy.
We will take the front room here, and I'll get the blue painter's tape.
Uh-huh.
And I'll draw a line right down the room.
Mm-hmm.
And on one side of the room, I'll have, you know, my tree, and everyone will be singing and joyful and happy and loving, and it'll be just a fun, great place to be.
Watch what you said.
The other side of the tape, you can have your little humbug area.
No.
Well, we'll wave at you.
This is where we're still in discussion. All right, so here's the deal. I will say this.
Oh, wow.
There are a lot of biblical basic truths
yes,
that
I
are
know.
very clear here that Rick and I are 100% in agreement on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a Grinch. And he knows I don't like being called one. So we're 100% in agreement on salvation,
Mm-hmm.
baptism,
Mm-hmm.
the church, marriage, a lot of biblical basics. And those are a lot of things we talk about here. But then there's some details that we are not in 100% agreement on.
Mm-hmm.
And Christmas is one of those.
Right.
So anyway, so...
Well, I think the just a general thing, I understand that Christmas is really, honestly, as far as the day of celebration, the way we do it and all, culture-wise, I guess, is not in the Bible. Definitely Santa Claus is not. And we're not pro-Santa and all that kind of stuff, but I am pro-Christmas. I like the fact that it's a day that people, even non-believers, even people that don't know Christ as Savior, still are somewhat okay with talking about Jesus. I think it is really a neat time of the year where Christians can really evangelize and really talk to people about the Lord. And it's really kind of neat how the whole, you know, people kind of go into that direction. So there are many, I think, pro-Christmas arguments.
And I will say that the one thing I very much do appreciate about it is that it is recognized by the world in general. And it's something where people recognize Christ. And that is something that I do value about it. And there that is. However, I would still prefer not to
I agree.
but that's that. So anyway, so I do want to say that, yeah, well, it's just the screen is flipped. Shelly said that her husband, oh, hold on, I want to go back a little bit. I want to miss it. She said they gave out 109 Ziplocs of candy with gospel tracts in them.
Yeah, very good.
So
I like it.
That was really exciting. I love hearing stories about people who are telling others about Christ. So if you are doing that, I would love to hear about anything you guys are doing.
Absolutely.
On a day-to-day basis to share the gospel message with people, because it's really encouraging. We're so glad to hear
And if
about
anyone ever gets saved and you know about it and you tell us, I mean, we'll give it we'll acknowledge it on here because it's awesome.
She says they go out on Black Friday and stand in front of Walmart and give out tracts, and people take them without getting mad, and it's really great.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. I love hearing that people are doing that and sharing the gospel. So the other question that we were asked, the less controversial one, do you want to read what that was?
Okay.
Oh man.
Okay. So are we done with that?
Yep. This is from Jennifer, my beautiful friend Jennifer Edwards, who does. She helps moderate the group on Facebook, the Fundamental Faith group, and she shares all the prayer requests from the Bible studies.
I would love to hear you and Amanda's tips on keeping your marriage and each other first before the kids. It's a constant struggle for me, of mine, she says. There you go. Yep.
I think that was so much harder of a struggle when the kids were younger.
Yes, and I think it's like that in pretty much every home. I think there's a big difference, and those of you that have had older kids, and we're starting to get that now, there's a big difference between having the little ones and diapers and feeding time and all that stuff, and then the older ones. You know, there's a big difference.
Because our kids are so old now, I do not even... It's not even a competition. I'd much rather hang out with him.
Because when the kids are younger, you are kind of swapping them back and forth, taking care of them, and you're not really together as much as you'd like to be. Mm-hmm. Now you get to be unified when they're older because they're taking over the house, and you're hiding in the corner with your wife. You're unified and you're hiding.
I don't know about hiding.
No, I'm just kidding.
But we are unified. I don't know if there's a specific age, but it does change. At some point, they get old enough that they're doing their own thing. And I guess really, when it comes down to it, Jennifer's a mom, and she's talking about kind of a mom struggle. At some point, they really don't need mom so much. And mom is cool with that. Or at least mom should be cool with that, because that's kind of the goal. That's the goal of momming, is to get them to where they can take care of their own stuff. And
absolutely.
You have some free time to hang out with the hubs. And so there's not a particular age. It just depends on each child and what their needs are. I think we don't have any special needs children in our house, but I do know families with special needs children, it's a little more challenging. They have to purpose to do it because that's a whole different situation.
Understood. That's obvious.
But so like I said, there's no age. It really just depends on the individual needs of the child. But in general, when you have older teens and young adults in your house, like the ones that are passing around me right now, then it's like, great seeing you guys. Go away. I'm hanging out with him. So,
because I remember when we first, when we were in Maryland, the kids were very young. We moved to North Carolina. They're young, but at some point, Brian's the oldest. He was able to be in charge.
He was 14,
and we wouldn't leave for very long. Mm-hmm. But we would take maybe a quick trip to the dollar store or a quick trip to the grocery store or coffee, and they were short trips.
Yep.
They weren't long, and we would go, and we were a little. There was some anxiety at first because you're leaving your babies at home, but they were getting older, and Brian was in charge of them, and
he's very responsible.
He definitely is. So I guess it's like putting your toe in the water. And then as the kids grew and as I guess we aged, we started taking more and more trips, away. We had that opportunity, and now in all seriousness, and this was before we had family cell phones. So
that was before cell
So
phones.
you can kind of now we live in a time where everyone seems to have a cell phone, but this was just a couple of years ago. And we did not have them, so when we left for a quick 20-minute trip, they had a phone at the house, but we didn't have a phone to get a hold of them. So that there was some anxiety, but Lord took care of all of it. But
I will say, I know that there's a struggle when you have young kids and you're a new mom.
Yes.
To keep your marriage first, because you are so concerned about your kids and they do need you all the time. And so, in terms of the balance that you're talking about, making sure that you have your husband first, or at least your relationship with your husband first, and not excluding the Lord. Obviously, this is obviously the Lord's plan within marriage, that you have your relationship with your husband has a priority over your relationship with your children. And Rick and I were talking about Bible verses, and he immediately thought of the Genesis verses.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that starts with the idea that...
Well, because that's where marriage began.
Mm-hmm.
So you always kind of go back to the beginning of,
Mm-hmm.
of it all.
You want me to find the verse for you?
Of what? Oh, I have it right here.
Oh, you have it? Okay.
Okay, so the Lord made man, and he did not have a helper or anyone to be with.
He did not.
Yep, and it says it is not good that the man should be alone, and that's Genesis chapter 2 and verse number 18.
Mm-hmm.
And so, let me see. Should I read the whole passage?
Well...
And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. And Adam said, This is now bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. And here was the verse I really wanted to get to.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh.
Mm-hmm.
And that's God's idea. That's the way God wants it. That's the way, it is God's will, mm-hmm. that when a man and a woman get married, that they leave mother and father, mm-hmm. and they become one flesh, and they start a brand new family.
And that was reiterated in Mark and in Matthew. It says the Pharisees were tempting him about asking him if he could divorce his wife for every cause. And Christ responded, and he said, haven't you read he that the male and female? And he said, for this cause shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and the twain shall be one flesh. Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. Mm-hmm. Wherefore, what therefore God hath joined together, let no man put asunder. So, and that's repeated both times. So Christ in Matthew and Mark. So Christ reiterated the things that were said in the Old Testament, and so just that idea that the two become one.
Right.
And more than that, the kids will leave the mother and father, and they're going to be one with someone else.
So, in all seriousness, I mean, we're talking about how, or tips for a husband and wife to stay close when there's kids around. And I think an important place to start is you got to get your mind straight. Mm-hmm. If you get your mind straight, then in your home you can make sure that your spouse stays on the front burner. The idea is that your spouse is permanent. Mm-hmm. She's not going anywhere, or he's not going anywhere. That's a permanent thing. You are one flesh. The kids, although they will remain your kids as far as living in your house under your watch and care, that's temporary. So it is not right to your heart to cling to the kids like they're permanent and they're leaving, and neglect who is permanent. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's just not good thinking there. And another thing to point out, because some folks they almost make idols out of their kids. Mm-hmm. Not that you shouldn't love your kids. This almost sounds like kid bashing, but it's not. This is marriage. This is promoting marriage, is what it is. When you read this, you see that the husband and the wife were a family. When kids come in, the family grows, but the husband and the wife all by themselves are a family. And I think sometimes people, they get married and then they have a child and they think, oh, look, we're a family now, and it's so great. And they don't want their kid to leave because, they want to be a family. Well, listen, you're a family without children, you know. So you got to make sure that family, the husband and the wife family, stays strong. Stay strong. Because I'll be honest with you, and I've seen it. I've seen it in houses that don't promote the marriage. The kids actually suffer in the long run. You think sometimes that you're doing the kids a favor by making them first, but in the long run, you're going to hurt the kids by not promoting your marriage. You're not giving them a healthy view of marriage. And I'll tell you what, no child wants to grow up and know that mom and dad are not close, you know, and you know that happens all the time. So, you go ahead.
Two things on the comments. Rosalie said that her husband's in the hospital and he's in a lot of pain and they're running tests and they don't know what's wrong. So she asked if we would pray for him. And so we'll pray for you, Rosalie, and him. And Mama Jen, we're talking about marriage. So exactly what you were saying, just this idea that it does hurt the children. And also impacts their ability to see the Lord. Because, of course, there's so many things that happen within a marriage that reflects from the parents to the children. And sometimes you might think you're putting your kids first and focusing on them, but you're actually doing them harm, and it's a detriment to them if you do it in such a way that it causes harm to your marital relationship. Do you know what I mean? It's the Lord's plan, and it's going to interfere with how they see themselves in your home and how they see themselves in their relationship with the Lord. And you know, you have to really watch what you do. One of the hardest things for me I was pointing out this way, for me, is you know, I'm just going to move on to this because it's related to this whole thing. The Ephesians 5. You can't talk about marriage without hitting Ephesians 5, right? Mm-hmm. Which, of course, we've talked about before. It is the wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands. It's unto the Lord, for the husband's the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he's the Savior of the body. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let wives be unto their own husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of the water by the word, that he might present it to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself, for no man ever yet hated his own flesh, but nourisheth and cherisheth it, even as the Lord the church. For we're members of his body, of his flesh and his bones, and for this cause, yet again, this is another time, this part is repeated, for this cause shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall be joined unto the wife, and the two shall be one flesh. This is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. Nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife, even as himself, and see that the wife reference her husband. And so again, that whole idea of the two will become one flesh, but in here it's referencing the idea that the relationship between a husband and wife is a picture of the relationship of Christ in the church. And we have talked about submission before, so we aren't going to go into that this time. But you can check out all the other live events. But certainly, it's very clear what it says here, that the wife has a certain role and the husband has a certain role. But the important thing that we're talking about when it comes to the marriage idea is that it is a picture of Christ in the church. And so when the mom or the wife takes the children over the husband, can you see with that picture? It's choosing something else before the Christ figure. Do you know what I'm saying? When it comes, the Bible presents here. So that's not a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. Christ and his church are not separated. And so if that's, you know, if marriage is a picture of that, then the husband and the wife should not be separated. You know, and they should be together as much as possible on the same page. Therefore, there needs to be great communication and understanding, and sometimes a lot of compromise and stuff, and just, give and take. But you need to be together. And I tell you what, and our culture tries to separate husbands and wives all the time with all kinds of things, and No. The Bible is definitely, God is a promoter of marriage. Go ahead. I'm just giving little tidbits as you go. Tonight I'm a tidbitter.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at the comments. Rosalie said, my grandmother was taught to serve the husband before the children at the table. What are your thoughts? And so I would agree with that.
Awesome.
but
Awesome.
but I will tell you why. I'm going to tell you why. It's not to puff up his ego.
No, and you tell him, but it's good for the children.
That's exactly why I think it's important to do it.
Because I'll tell you something, and it's not me, Richard, trying to act like I'm something.
Because Rick is the kind of person that if he had a choice, he would be very, very last every time.
The Lord is number one.
Yes.
And the Lord wants to be number one in the house. And to make sure that he's number one in the house, he expects the dad to promote the Lord in the house. So he puts a lot of attention and responsibility on the man. And when the mom is caring for the dad in front of the children, it sends a message to the children, hey, dad's a big deal. We should watch dad. We should listen to dad. We should follow dad's example. Dad knows the Lord. Watch how dad lives. Watch how mom loves dad. You know, the kids watch all that. And you know, on the flip side of that coin, if the dad is neglected and if the wife is neglected, the kids see that too.
Yes.
And you definitely, 10 times out of 10, in front of your kids and in every other circumstance, you must be a promoter of marriage. Because this world is not. This world tries to tear marriage apart. But in the Christian home, everyone in that home should be a big promoter of marriage.
And I think promoter of marriage in the way that we just described in the Ephesians. And I totally 100% agree with what Rick just said, in that you know, the wife is supposed to be submitted and reverence her husband. It just said that. We just read that in Ephesians 5. And the purpose of that, not the entire purpose, but a portion of that purpose is for the children.
Yeah.
That they see dad is to be reverenced and respected in this household, and they learn to defer to him and give him that same reverence and respect. And then dad is supposed to love mom. The kids need to see dad love mom.
Right.
They need to see dad sacrificing for mom.
Oddly enough, in that passage that you read, you know, God tells the man to even as he loves himself. God doesn't have to tell the man to love himself. It is in man to be selfish and to promote himself and love myself. I love myself. I take care of my own needs. God says, you know, okay, just like you take care of your own needs, you also need to take care of your wife in the same manner. That's one flesh. You know, just like the same reason you work so you have money so you can buy food for your own belly, you need to make sure that you're taking care of your wife and making sure she eats and the kids eat.
He's just taking care of the cat.
Yeah, the cat.
She's playing in a box. So anyway, but it's for the kids. It is 100% for the kids that you would do that. I mean, I'm not saying
Cats
that's the entire reason.
boxes.
It's not the entire reason, but it is 100% important for the kids that you follow this goal. Because what happens is, if you do it differently, if you show the kids the first respect and give them everything first, if the kids get all of the love and affection, it doesn't come to mom. If they don't see that between the adults, if it's all poured on them, then they have an unbalanced view of their role in the household. And I think that's one of the reasons why, and I am not patting ourselves on the back.
No.
Not by any means, because
No.
I totally think anything decent in this house is totally God's doing. I will say this, that we do have older teens and young adults in our house. And we do not have to raise our voices, and we don't have to go crazy and like yell and slam things around to get people to obey our rules. All we got to do is say, be home by this time, and they come home. You know, don't be with these people, and they're not with those people. You know, Richard Beale does not have to, you know, go insane to get adult men to do what he expects them to do in this house. And that is because that started when they were young. when they were young and they saw this relationship and they were taught to respect him and to be loving and honoring to me by the way we treated one another, and they saw that as the priority, and they understand that in this house that is the expectation, and it's our house. It's our priority. Now they're getting older now, and they know it's probably about time we move out so we can have our own house with our own rules. But the whole point is just that, you know, all of that started early, and you are not doing your kids a favor at all if you try to put them first. You're doing them harm. You're doing them detriment, because we've seen other families where the kids were always put first, and then they get to be older teens and young adults, and you got some problems.
And
you got some major problems in terms of them being obedient and following rules in the house, because you know what? They think they're king.
And another thing, if and I'm talking to people, and I know some of them are married here. If you're married, you got married because you want a strong marriage. I don't think no one gets married because they want to have a lukewarm marriage. You know, they want to be close. That's why you get married. So you get married and you have kids, and then you stop being close because you're thinking, well, we got to take care of these kids. You know. Okay. So what happens is, how long do you think it would take? 10, 15 years, 16 years to get a kid raised and get to the point where you can also start to look at your spouse again? My point is, so you have like a 15, 16, 7-year gap, you know, and then eventually the kids are raised, and then, oh yeah, now we can focus on our marriage again. After about 15, 16, 17 years, you know, I'm not saying that you can't be close and you can't have a marriage, but it's going to be hard to have that same close oneness that you had in the beginning.
Because it's been torn up a little bit.
Now the Lord can do it, and the Lord can get folks together. But the thing is, many times couples don't let the Lord do it. They get bitter, they get upset. There's a lot of regret and things that they just cannot get over. And I've seen it, and I've heard couples talking and stuff. You know, you got two people, they're married, and they get some little kids. They have some babies, and then many times it's the mom. You know, she goes away to take care of those babies in the house, of course, but she's focused on the babies. And then years down the road, babies grow up, babies go to college, babies leave, and she's looking now at that young man that she married, who's now an old man, thinking, who's this old guy in my house? And they have no idea how to talk to one another and how to live in the same house with one another, because in all seriousness, they're strangers. You know, they've lived in a house now for almost 2 decades, raising kids, but they don't know each other anymore. All they know are the kids. You know, and a telltale to that is if you sit with your wife or your husband and the only thing you have to talk about is what the kids are doing, something's wrong. You need some other things to talk about, okay? Yeah.
Now, folks, in the comments, they're talking about some different circumstances, some different family dynamics.
Oh, sure.
Blended families, single parents.
Sure.
And that makes it more challenging.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that's for sure the need.
I'm watching the cat.
And I can't, we're not addressing single parents here. We're specifically talking about marriage.
That would be a totally different
conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a totally different matter.
But blended families, it is the same thing. Because I think a lot of times when you have families feel like because you're coming in this blended family, they almost feel like they have to protect their children from their new spouse. You know, they feel like they're not going to love them as much as they would their natural children or whatever. And I think that's one of those circumstances that you really have to, again, make a good choice before you get married. Because once you are married,
it's all
then you got these rules that the Lord set up in Ephesians 5, and you have to respect this husband, and he has to love his wife, and you are one, and those kids are secondary. Do you know what I'm saying? So that makes it hard. It makes it more challenging. But you know, we've been there. We've dealt with that in our own family, and we totally understand that. And I've said it before. There were times when we had Brian, and I had to Rick and I disagreed. And I had to say, you know what? He's the man of this house. And his way rules, period. So, and it was always for his benefit. And frankly, I think we actually, because I purposed to do it with Brian, I think Brian's better behaved. If you want my honest, I think with Ricky and Brianna, it was a little bit easier to give in to the kids. And they're not as well behaved. I think because I had to purpose to do it with Brian, it was a little bit easier. But it's just, and again, Melissa said that she was a single mom for 6 years, and then she got married. It was a hard transition because her daughter was used to being just you and her, and she had all the attention, and so she didn't understand that whole dynamic. Those are challenges. Those are things that makes it harder. But again, that the Lord's plan is this, and you can only assume that His plan is the best plan, and it's the best plan for you within the marriage. It's the best plan for your kids who are being raised up to be adults, and it's the best plan for your kids who are going to have their own marriage and their own children, and it's going to set that good example for them in the future. So you have to remember that, because in the moment it's going to hurt you to look at your little baby and know that you got to put the baby down. I know one thing that a lot of young parents struggle with is bedtime.
Oh, we did.
We fussed about that.
Yeah.
You'll never guess who was the one who wanted the kids in bed a little longer. Take a guess. I'm not even going to tell you. Just take a guess on that one. But but that was a discussion between us, and at some point we just said, Rick, which one was Rick? So don't even say it. Don't say it. So so it was a discussion, and I think the end result was we agreed that it would have been better if we'd have set a definite bedtime.
I agree.
Yes, it was Rick that wanted to let them stay up longer. Because I was like, bedtime is 8 o'clock, get in the bed. And he was like, well, it's okay, let them stay a little longer. But we agreed afterwards, we wish we'd have nipped that in the bud, because that came back to bite us. Because then when you want to be alone, we had to straighten that out.
Yeah.
In fact, we really never have. We still got to deal with being up all the time.
True.
So, you think it's the dad that always wants them to let it? I have seen a lot of moms that do that, though. I think he's just really the softie. He's a softie.
Well, we would put him to bed.
And then Ricky would climb down the stairs.
Yeah, this is when see, we don't have stairs here, but this is when we lived in Maryland, and we lived in a townhouse, and the steps, you could hear every foot on the steps. And we would put him upstairs, and we would come downstairs, and then you would hear this one little step, boom, 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 boom. So, and you knew it was like, say, Ricky coming down and on, and he'd come down, and of course they're so sweet when they want to stay up. I'm just like, all right. And my thought always was, I want them to go to sleep now, but instead of going to sleep up there, they could go to sleep down here with us, and then once he's asleep, I'll take him up to his bed, and
look at him, he's such a softie. He still smiles when he thinks about it. He's like, oh, my baby.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to be with my baby.
Yeah.
I don't want to be with those kids, because I was with them all day long, and I think that's also dynamic too.
I understand.
I was with them all day long. I was ready to hang out with Rick, and he was like, oh, I miss my kids.
Well, when a kid wants to stay up, they're really sweet, and they kind of fools the dad.
Yeah.
Okay, when you come home from work,
think mom's being mean.
When you come home from work and they're all, fussing and crying and whining, a dad can easily say no. But when they're all, when
Daddy,
what I mean?
I miss you.
Yeah,
I haven't seen you all day.
Can we stay up 10 more minutes? Yeah, then they kind of, it does fool the dad.
They want to climb on Daddy's lap.
Yeah. Because then Dad's their favorite person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure, you can stay up. Don't worry about it. I'm just kidding.
It's all lies trying to get you. Melissa, they're lying to you.
They're deceitful.
They are.
They're terrible
They're
little
trying
people.
to trick you.
Terrible
They're
little
manipulative.
people.
She said her husband works overnight, so she's terrible about letting the kids stay up. And then when he's off, he's like, "What have you done?" They're lying to you, Melissa, or she is. they're trying to twist your heart. Like, it's no big deal, right? He's not around. Mm-mm. Don't fall for it. Tell him to get in bed. but again, that's just the whole idea of marriage.
Yeah.
Having the priority. It's got to have the priority, and it's in everyone's best interest because the whole family is built on this. Can you guys not hear? Let me see. On this. Can you guys not hear? Let me see. Let me just.
Sounds okay.
Yeah, everything looks back. On.
You definitely have your
Okay.
preacher voice tonight.
Okay, let's see. The boys pull at your heart. It's always the boys. They're so boys always pull at mom's heart, and daughters always pull at daddy's heart. Because Brianna would sit on daddy's lap and pet his face and be like, "I love you, daddy."
Yeah.
And they just tricky that way. But anyway, so I think that pretty much is it. You just have to remember to answer the question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't even remember what the question was. It was just, the question was something to the effect of how can you keep your marriage priority?
Oh yeah, tips.
With
just
your children.
Tips to keeping it.
Oh, did we give any specific tips?
Mm,
I think we talked about the biblical reasoning behind it.
yeah.
Any tips to do it? I mean, one of the things is kind of what we were just talking about. You really just have to remember they're tricksters. Yeah, I mean, really, honestly, you have to remember that. You have to keep it in mind. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Those cute little sweet angels,
yeah, but I think
they have their own agenda.
The tips that they were looking for are tips for the husband and wife to stay constantly
Connected?
Connected, even though that there's children
Okay.
in there, you know. And I go ahead.
I was waiting to hear what you had to say. What's your idea?
Well, I think well, I mean, there's many things we could talk about, but just one thing to get it going is like, okay, you're raising kids, you got children in your house, your husband and wife, you got to remember to do it as a team.
Mm.
And I think many times, you know, and it happens because it happened with us. You know, I was working, you're working, and we're trading the kids back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is it ends up being two different captains in the house.
Mm-hmm.
You're not working as a team.
That's a good way to explain it.
In the morning you're the captain, and at night I'm the captain. And
It's like tag team.
Yeah, you're not really working as a team.
As a team.
You're not on the same page, and I think it's important. And good communication promotes that. But to always understand that together we're raising these kids.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about things that you have to do, and you know what I mean. So, because I think the thing is that you get so busy raising kids that there's this natural divide. Well, I got it, you know, and but that hurts marriage. It always has to be we, not me or I. Us, we, not me.
I do think too that you need to purpose to continue to make time for your spouse. Like, people always talk about making sure you have a date night every week.
Mm-hmm.
I still think that's great advice. I
Yeah.
mean, even when the kids were younger and we would only leave, we would always leave on Sundays, and it started out with just an hour,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah, we just put our toe in the water.
yeah, just a little bit, but just an hour was a big deal
Mhm.
at the time. 'Cause we
Well,
didn't
this was
have
actually,
time.
we talked about the dollar store trip. It started with like Dollar General trips and things like that. Or, oh yeah, we need gas for the car, let's go get gas. And then we come back and all this kind of stuff. And it was like 20 minutes here, 15 minutes there. And then we eventually worked up to, hey, it's Sunday, it's between church services, let's go get coffee.
Mhm.
You know, and we would get the kids lunch and get them all situated and settled. And, you know, y'all are good now.
Mhm.
Mom and Dad are going out for a little bit. And we'd go for about an hour or so and then come back. This is when they were, you know, Brian was, you know, teenager, but young teenager. Go ahead.
Oh, I had nothing to say. I will say this though, that guilt, I think, plays into it a little bit. Because I think sometimes moms and dads, it's like the kids when they would try to stay up late at night.
Mm-hmm.
They try to guilt them. I haven't seen you all day. You know, and there's always they always try to put that guilt factor in. And sometimes we have our own feelings of guilt.
Mm-hmm.
You know, different people have different circumstances. You know, if you're a single mom and you're working all the time, you might feel guilty about that. If you are a dad and you have a lot of hours at work, you never see your kids, you might feel guilty about that. And so your own issues might play into that decision. You have to remember not to let your issues impact what's right for your kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you still have to do what's right, even if you're a single mom, you worked all hours, you haven't seen them. You know, so what that it's not the ideal situation in your mind. You know what I mean? This is what their reality is, and the Lord's taking care of it. And you got to make sure their stuff is the way it needs to be, because you want them to be the best kids that they can be. And so for that reason, you're going to back it up and follow the Lord's leading.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So don't let that guilt play into it. You've got to remember that the Lord's way is the best way. And yes, no family situation is perfect for sure.
No, absolutely not. No.
Oh, good. Hi, Rosalie. I see that you're here.
But many times, just so you know, your kids will probably have a marriage
Mm-hmm.
similar to the one that you had. You know, so that's why you really want to present a biblical and loving view of marriage. You know, I have a relative who, when their kids were younger, she would always be with her kid. When it was time for bed, she wouldn't sleep in the bed with her husband. She would sleep in the bed with her kids, and they did that for years. So for many, 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 many years, the master bedroom became the husband's room, and the mom would sleep with the children. And much like what I said about 10 minutes ago or so, now that the kids are gone, the husband and the wife are like, well, who are you? I don't know. Who are you? I think we got married once. You know, that whole thing.
I
And
can't tell you what a big mistake I think that is.
you really need to purpose in your heart and it's good for the kids, it's good for the marriage, it's good for everyone involved to really just the basics. You know, the basics are you share a room, you share all these things, so share them. That's part of being one flesh.
You're so right, Mama Jen. She said the last time we talked about singles, noticing how their parents treat each other, because that's the marriage you're going to have. You're marrying that person, not just them. Watch, if it's the boy, watch his dad, and if it's the girl, watch her mom. That's 100% true. You will end up with that same kind of relationship, and I've seen that with other, especially when people have young children. Not every time do they keep it going on for so many years, but especially when they have young children, they do that. They'll go sleep with the young children. Not a good idea.
Yeah. And I understand if it's like a special circumstance, like the child is sick or something.
Yes.
Mom's worried about the kid. Mom wants to be, my mom would sometimes, when I was growing up, if I was not feeling good, she would. I'm not talking about
We're talking about
a
pattern,
standard practice.
Yes.
This is my bedroom. You don't sleep here. That kind of thing.
My place is with the kids.
And
go over there.
And the funny thing is, I don't think it's different with just my my one relative. I mean, there are several, and listen, plural, several couples that I know at my job who sleep in separate rooms. It kind of makes me think that this is something that goes on from house to house, all over. Not every house, obviously.
And we're not talking about, because Rosalie says, what if a spouse snores, separate rooms could be a blessing. I mean, there's a lot of medical reasons why you might not sleep in the same bed. Right. But we're talking about in general. Yeah,
in general. Not a specific reason why you need to sleep separate, just standard practice that's just what we do. There's one couple that I'm thinking of, and a different couple, they sleep separate, and I've talked to the husband before, and I can't figure out why. we've talked about it. They get along. Everything's fine. They have as far as I can tell, a pretty good marriage, but they don't sleep in the same room. And I said, well, why? You know, because in all honesty, marriage is all right, you know. And I'm like, what in the world are you getting at of sleeping by yourself? You know, it's just like, you know, don't you get lonely? You know.
We have a king size bed, and frankly, I want to move it down to a queen. I don't like it when I don't even know he's there. When he's way over on the other side, I'm like, are you over there? Because I feel better knowing he's close by.
Yeah.
Like I personally can't imagine that. But I mean.
But you know, in all seriousness, I mean, somebody will say, well, it's such a small thing. Why are you worried about that?
But it's indicative of bigger things.
It's a branch on a tree.
Yeah.
You know, it's a symptom of something else going on. Because no doubt, if they're sleeping in separate rooms, they're probably doing
separate
other
all day
things
long
separate.
with jobs. And, I mean, when are you going to have time together? I mean, there's a physical closeness that you have to have.
You sleep separate, okay? Do you eat separate? I mean, in all seriousness, no doubt there's more things that the couple does separate, you know. And, I mean, if that's the case, you have to ask the question, well, why did you get married? You know, like, you know, the preacher, I didn't get married to live alone. Yeah. You know, that whole thing.
Sorry, it's a joke a preacher makes, and we're not going to go into that whole thing. But
no, there was a preacher that I listened to, and he was telling a sermon how his wife was, and he was away preaching at another church, so he was staying in a hotel, and he was just saying how much he didn't like it. Because he's a married man and he's staying night after night by himself in this hotel, and he said, I didn't get married to live alone, that whole kind of thing.
It's just how he delivers it.
Yeah, it's how he delivers it, but that's the gist of it, and I agree with that, and I always think of that as like sleeping in separate rooms. In all seriousness, and I don't want to seem like we've always done it, there have been times like in Maryland where I was just so exhausted that I would.
That's a funny story.
Yeah, I know. But before if she tells the funny story,
I'm going to tell it.
That's on her.
I'm going to tell it.
But let me explain before
tell
she
it
tells
on you.
it. The gist of that story is that we would work late, and the kids were little, and the kids, like I said, weren't going to bed on time. My fault. So eventually, when the kids went to bed, it was finally the time that we could talk. So it was getting really late, so I would force it out. I would stay downstairs on the couch, and we would try to talk. Well, anyway. What would happen night after night after night is we would stay up so late trying to find 10 minutes to be alone that I would fall asleep on the couch. And the thing is that, believe it or not, once I fall asleep, I'm a bear to wake up.
He's grumpy.
I'm okay.
I know he seems so nice.
Well,
But he's grumpy.
There are people who sometimes, when I get really tired, I get grumpy. You know, that's why getting up at 3 in the morning and coming home, I usually try to take a nap in the afternoon, and everybody wants me to take a nap because if I don't take a nap, I'm unbearable. So I would get grumpy, so she would just leave me on the couch.
So I would try and wake him up at first, and then it wasn't working for us. So I said, you know what, if you fall asleep, I'm just leaving you there, period. Yeah. So he ended up staying on the couch.
She does. She just leaves me.
So he would
wherever I fall asleep, that's where I wake up.
Unless you're laying on where I sleep.
She will not budge me.
So he would sleep on the couch all the time. And Ricky, years later, it was probably just a couple of years ago, he said something about how I was going to make Rick sleep on the couch. And I said, I've never made your dad sleep on the couch. He said, yeah, you did. You used to do it all the time when we lived in Maryland. I said, Richard, I have never made your dad sleep on the couch. He's like, well, he was always on the couch. And I said, because he fell asleep. And you know how angry he gets? I just let him stay there. And he was like, all this time, I thought you were so mean, always making dad sleep on the couch. And I was like, what in my character has ever made you think that I would do something like that? And he was like, now that you say it, it makes perfect sense. But I just always thought you were so mean, always making him sleep on the couch. I was like, no, I would not
But-
ever do that.
But that is a good point to point out. You remember how someone asked about serving your husband and all this kind of stuff 1st dinner,
Yeah.
and I said, you know, it's good to do that in front of the children, so the children get a good idea that marriage is important. My point is that kids are watching, and kids are trying to figure out what's going on. Ricky got a wrong idea of something that was going on.
You
But my
set a
point
bad
is,
example.
I know. I know, but the thing is that kids are always, always, always watching. That's why you always have to be on guard and really making sure that you are, like we say, I guess promote is the word of the night. Promoting marriage to your kids, because it's good for them. It's not just good for your spouse. It's not just honoring to God. It's good for your children. You are raising them. You are training them, and part of raising and training them is making sure that they're what will be part of a good marriage. You know, you want them to be one day a good husband or a good wife, and part of the training is to display it for them. You know, they need a visual illustration. Go ahead. I get on my soapbox.
Well, since it's so late, we probably won't go too much longer. Mom says, if my husband and I have had a big fight and I don't want to share the bed, I go sleep on the couch and try to get up before the kids do, so they never connect the dots. It's rare that we get that angry. Shania says, y'all traumatized Ricky. Rick traumatized Ricky. I gotta say, there have been, I would never tell him to go sleep anywhere. There's been a couple of times, we've been together 20 years, and there's just been a couple of
20
times
plus.
that I may have slept elsewhere. Just a couple of times. Because I'm really, he'll tell you, I'm not a stay angry kind of person.
No.
It takes
In
a
all
lot to get
seriousness,
me angry.
in all seriousness, that's my flesh, but I am more of a stay angry person. You let things go.
I do.
I chew on things for a long time. Sometimes I gotta just cut it out. You know.
It is rare that it is something that I'm going to let disturb my sleep.
Right.
Because it's really about me letting it disturb my sleep. You know, for me to have to leave my bed and go sleep somewhere else, it would have to be something that really made me angry and would be beyond my ability to let that go. There's really just been just a couple of times I can even think of in all these years that I've ever done that. But
when you're having issues and trouble like that with your spouse, my advice to you is just for the moment, agree to disagree, agree to talk about it, and go to sleep.
yeah, there have been many times we
Because-
were both furious and laying in the bed.
The Bible does say, what Psalm 127, it's vain for you to rise up early to stay up late to eat the bread of sorrows. And is that not true?
For he giveth his
You-
beloved sleep.
Rise up early. So I get up at 3, and I stay up all day, except for a little nap. And I stay up all day, but I start getting wore out and tired. And then an important subject comes up, and what happens? You start trying to talk about something important, something big, but you're tired. You're eating the bread of sorrows. You're getting down. You're getting discouraged. You're getting grumpy. And that's when the friction starts. And is it not true? The more tired you get, the worse something seems. And so you're with your spouse, and it's just all of a sudden, it's, you know?
We learned early on, we just don't discuss things that are
The best thing
late
to
at night.
do,
That's just not a good idea.
if you can't come to any solution,
Wait till morning.
you agree to disagree and say, we will talk about this in the morning, and just peacefully choose to go to sleep. Not fussing and fighting, don't draw it out, just go to sleep, stop eating the bread of sorrows, and get up. And many times, true, isn't it? Many times when you wake up, it's like,
It's not even important.
why was that such a big deal?
Yeah.
You know, what it was is you were so
Tired.
tired, it seemed like it was this big of a deal, and it wasn't. And I tell you, many disagreements, I'd say, that we have had have been at night. If I can look back on 20 years of times where she and I disagreed and did not get along for a while, it was always at night. You know, in the morning, everything's fine. There, you know, everything's good. The tired you get, the longer the day goes. You know, that's the stress, it's anxiety. And what it is your body is just getting tired, and it's, you know, it's affecting your mind, your soul, your thinking. Go ahead.
Rosalie said her daddy used to say the Bible says don't let the sun go down on your anger.
Exactly.
Then he would laugh and say, stay up and fight it out.
I didn't see that one.
Did I mention he's a little grumpy when he's tired?
Yeah. See.
Hold on, I want to say what
Go
I have
ahead.
to say. There's times that he will just start to discuss something, realize it's too late to talk about it, and then Mr. Grumpy Pants is grumpy, and I'm trying to go to sleep, and he's grumpy, and I gotta ignore everything he's saying, and not be mad at him for being grumpy because I know he's just tired.
Yeah.
And I gotta let that go.
You're very good at that. I appreciate you.
Lord got you the right lady.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, so you have to recognize that sometimes, sometimes it can be real easy just to keep fighting.
Yeah, I know.
You gotta let that stuff go.
She deals with it. It's the many moods of Richard. Because I don't know if you've noticed. Maybe you've noticed.
A soft answer turns the way.
I'm quiet.
Good night, Bandana Grandma.
Good night. And I don't talk. I'm quiet. I don't really want to say much. And then all of a sudden, when I start getting tired, I start getting goofy. And you can, if I'm ever acting kind of silly and goofy, it's usually because I'm tired.
That's
and
step one.
You
go
got
downhill.
You got to ride that out. And if you enjoy that kind of thing, enjoy it because it's not going to last. Because the goofiness eventually gets to a peak, and then it's grumpy, pass out. You know. And I'm sorry. And then I always think, oh, I'm not going to do that tomorrow.
Yep.
And then it starts off. The morning starts. I don't say nothing. I'm very quiet in the morning. When I go to work, no, I am at work.
I know.
I get to work, and people know for the first few hours I don't talk. Sometimes new people will get hired, and they think I'm grumpy, and then people tell them, you know, he just doesn't talk till he's had his coffee and he wakes up, you know. And then all of a sudden I start to talk, and then I start getting tired, goofy. I hit that peak.
Grumpy.
Yeah, and that's like a snowball. I tell you what, it takes me forever to get to the goofy, but I tell you, once you get to that peak, grumpy. I'm not proud of it. You deal with it a lot. Thank you.
He's gonna hit it very soon because it's almost 11 o'clock.
Yeah. Am I on the goof train or the grump train right
You're
now?
awfully happy right now.
Yeah. Well, you know what it is? I had a nap. I had a late nap. You see, and I'm in trouble for it because I got to get up tomorrow at 3 o'clock in the morning. Mm-hmm. And what happened was, and this is just a little side note. So it works out fine if when I get home from work, I take a nap immediately. It refreshes me, and then I'm good for the rest of the evening.
Agreed.
What happened today was
I left to go grocery shopping.
And I just stayed awake.
Yep.
I stayed awake, and then all of a sudden, right about the time I should have been waking up, is when I went down.
Sleep. Mm-hmm.
So we just started the live event. We started late pretty much because we got started late because one of the reasons was me. You know, I hadn't been up too long.
Not entirely.
Well, I know.
I was behind.
I know. I was trying to take the blame up.
I appreciate it.
That's part of marriage. That's sacrificial.
Is that what that was?
That was sacrificing. Take a note, fellas. It's all me.
You're so sacrificial.
It's all me.
You are so sacrificial.
If you want a good marriage, it's all you.
It's all you doing wrong. Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
that's what I'm saying. It's all me doing wrong.
Anyway.
Yeah. Oh my, that's funny.
I'm getting tired though.
All right.
He's a night owl. I am an early bird, and I like to go to bed.
Yeah, I hope we said something positive. At the very least, get your mind going. I guess we didn't give a lot of tips as far as tip 1, tip 2, tip 3, tip 4, tip 5.
No, but it's really a matter of just remembering what the Lord has to say about marriage.
Yeah, in all seriousness, you know, we're not in your house. I don't know what you like. But the thing is that you married that person, you know, then be married to that person. Do the things that you did before you had kids. Mm-hmm. Just figure out a way to do it while you still have the kids, you know.
And don't be tempted to have those kids
Yeah.
come in right up in between here. Don't even let them sit in between you.
Yeah.
Like don't even let them get a physical separation between the two of you. Let them know you two are a team and nothing's coming between that.
Right. Right. And
Doesn't matter how cute and charming they are. No.
and somebody's going to say, "Oh, you shouldn't do that to the kids." But listen, it's better for the kids. It's better for the kids if they know mom and dad is strong and they are together. A child can get, it's a biblical truth that a married couple is one flesh in the eyes of God. And a little child can get, oh, mom and dad are one. They act as a team. They agree with one another. A kid can get that. So, yeah.
I feel like I forgot to mention the one thing that I really wanted to say. So I want to say it real fast, if you guys don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I really wanted to say was that when it comes to that whole idea, the Ephesians 5 that I was reading, and the roles of the husband and wife, and the roles of the children, how you have to be together, and they have to be over to the side. And I think I kind of touched on it when I said that that was the wrong idea for the wife to pay attention to the children, because the church is supposed to be focused on Christ, and when it came to comparison, you have to remember the role that you have. And when you, as the church, the wife is the church, is turning over here to the kids, you are neglecting your duties over here. And I think we've made a lot of joke about it, but I do think that there is something very important to say about neglecting your spouse. And I will say this, I've picked on him a lot, so I'll admit that my wrong here.
I'm fine.
I have done this too, that I get distracted from all the things that have to be done, and I have to really catch myself sometimes.
Yeah.
And make sure that I don't get too distracted from what's important. I guess it's that Mary Martha syndrome, and try to make sure I'm not so busy, cumbered about with much serving, that I'm not doing so much of the stuff that needs to be done that I don't have time to pay attention to him. And I think the husband's role is to see that the wife is overwhelmed and pitch in. Because if he's over here feeling lonely and neglected because she's over here doing all this stuff, then he has to think to himself, what can I do to reach out? Because, we love because he first loved us. So again, that's the role of the husband, to be loving and to be helpful and to reach out and see what he can do to put himself out there. I think that's a Christ-like attribute. And Rick does that. If he sees I'm getting overwhelmed, he'll jump in and try to help out. But I do think that both parties have a role there, in that the wife has to make sure that she is not getting so distracted by other things, filling herself up with all of these empty, and even children can be empty because they're trying to fill the place of a husband, and that's not going to suffice. So the love of children is wonderful, but it's not the same as the love of a husband, and you have to have that. So so you got to make sure that you have everything in the right place, and that you're doing what you need to do, and that he's doing what he needs to do. That was the original thing I meant to say.
No, you did fine.
I'm just rambling
was
now.
Good. No, you did good. You did good.
You can tell I'm tired.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. But I tell you, in all seriousness, and it all makes for a strong marriage to put each other first. And in all seriousness, and it's a good thing in just the total work of God. Because, you think about it, you want strong churches and things like that, and a strong nation, but it all begins with strong families. It really does. And it's funny that there's that much writing on a husband and wife being close and living how God would have them to live. Because families that are not functioning like a family should, you get a bunch of them in a church, and they make a spiritually weak church. And then a bunch of those kinds of churches make a spiritually weak nation. So the idea is that you to do your part, you owe it to one another, and you also owe it to the church, and you owe it to just the work of God in general, that you are living and you're being the spouse that God has called you to be. God wants you to live as one. You know, it's been pointed out many times that, you know, Eve was given her name later, but in the beginning, when the woman was made, they were one. It was before sin came into the world, and when God called Adam, he was talking to both of them. They were together. They were one. You know, and they went everywhere together. Adam, they both came. So, and in all seriousness, that is how a marriage should be. You should be functioning as one. And it does. It's not just, oh, you're functioning as one, it's good for your house. It has a trickle-down effect on the church. It's very important. You should see being one in marriage as just as much work or just as much God-honoring work as sharing the gospel or helping somebody learn the things of God and teaching them the Bible. It is just as much service to God as any of those things. You know, to be that.
It's not the same
spouse.
Priority.
No.
But it's just as much.
Yeah, it is something that God has called you to do. And the thing about it is, He makes it very simple. You know, we make it complicated. But marriage is really simple if you do it God's way. It's complicated when we try to do it our way. When you try to have a marriage and keep it strong, and at the same time you're doing your little thing, you have your agenda over here, and they're having their little agenda over there, and in the midst of that you're trying to raise these kids which are totally taking your attention away from your spouse. When you do it that way, it gets complicated. But when you do it God's way, hey, just be together. Just be together. Be one. Think as one. Worship me as one. Follow me as one. You know that kind of thing.
Why don't you close in prayer? Because I'm going to take you.
You're falling asleep.
And we're going to go get in that bed. I'm so tired.
Well, I'm going to take my coffee with me.
Take your coffee.
Because I had a nap.
You got a nightstand.
Yeah. But anyway, I hope something that we said tonight in all the rambles helped. Really, if you're a married person tonight, just really cling to the one the Lord's given you. And I'll tell you what, if
your whole family will be blessed for it.
Yes, and if you're in a marriage and it's not how it should be, really incorporate God into it. You know, really, because I'll tell you what, the Lord can really mend hearts, and He can really help people begin to be close to Him and close to each other. There are a lot of that way. Anyway, that'd be a cute, ways to help a husband and wife, reconcile things. But
old blue never comes between us.
Oh no! Somebody say that.
She said, "Don't put old blue between you."
No.
Shania said, "Pray for her health."
Okay. Hold on.
Continue
to talk to the folks.
And Carrie says her cough needs prayer.
I write slow. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he already explained that he's a night out.
Oh.
Shania and Carrie. He's also a lefty, in case you can't tell.
They can't tell. I'm right down here. It's funny. I am left-handed, but I do a lot of things right-handed.
Well, you know what I love?
I
love that we sit together in church.
It's odd.
This is how we sit together in church. And
yeah.
I know you guys are backwards, but that's his left hand over there.
Yeah.
And so I'm right-handed.
Yeah.
So we'll sit together in church and we hold hands, and then I take notes with this hand and he takes notes with that hand.
Yeah.
And I love that works out that way.
But I guess there aren't that many left-handed folks, so that's kind of odd. But in the group of the lefties, I'm the odd one out, because it's true though. I write with my left, but I do a lot of things with my right. Like in school when we used to play sports and all, I throw with my right, but I only write with my left.
You're ambidextrous.
Huh? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. And it's funny. And I don't know. Well, I don't get on all that. No, because
I want to go to bed.
I know.
Talk for hours.
When I write, I guess you're supposed to write I don't know how you're supposed to write. But I almost hold the thing like a fist almost. right? And I had a teacher, I think it was in third or fourth grade, couldn't stand the way I wrote, and paired me up with another teacher who wrote left-handed, and we would practice, and the woman was trying to hold a pencil correctly. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I like to hold it like a fist. And finally, I think they just gave up on me. They said, I was Ricky back then. They said, Ricky, you just write any way you want. You know, I won. I won. But now today, we don't even write anymore. I just text.
Shania says it's her kidneys.
Okay. Shania, kidneys, Carrie, cough. I wrote Connie.
I was wondering what that was.
I was writing
Kidney.
cough. I know. I was writing cough and I wrote Connie, the name Connie. Okay. Cough. Okay. I got it?
All right.
Okay. Anyway.
Hold on, Mama Jen says she like continued prayer for her health concern.
Okay. Okay.
Your chair is so much lower than mine.
Oh, that and also, like we said before, I'm a sloucher.
No, I'm just looking at the chair.
I'm a huncher.
The chair.
Hmm?
I'm not even looking at you. I was looking at where the chair is.
Okay, well, I'll get one of those barbershop chairs. Okay. Are we good?
Yep.
Okay. All right, let's pray. All right, Father, I thank you for tonight, and I thank you for your word. I thank you for salvation, the fact that we have and can have a relationship with you through Christ. And I do pray for someone listening to us tonight talk about marriage. If they're not yet a Christian, I pray that tonight would be the night of their salvation, that they would simply make that one-time faith decision, repent of their sins and believe the gospel, and call on you with faith. And I pray that tonight they would decide to trust Christ to be their Savior. I pray for marriages tonight. I pray that everyone listening who is possibly single, that you would direct them to that one that you would have them to be with. For marriages that are listening tonight, I pray that you would bless each and every one. Help us to live the marriage as you've called us to, as one, making you first and being operating as a team. I pray that you would bless each couple. And then I think of the health needs tonight. We think of Rosalie's husband tonight who's in the hospital. I pray that you would help him, and I pray that you would ease the pain that he's feeling, of course. And then I pray that you would help the doctors through all these tests figure out what's wrong. I pray that you'd give them wisdom. And I pray that it's minor, and I pray that they'll know exactly how to treat him. And I pray that you would bless them tonight and help him right now. We pray for Shania and her health, her problem with her kidneys. I pray that you would touch her body, help her, and help the doctors know best how to treat her. I pray that you would help her with her discomfort and her pain. I pray that you would help Carrie with her cough. And I know we're coming up on cold and flu time, and a lot of folks are going to get sick coming up. And I just pray that you would just help all the things that we go through be minor. And I pray that you would help with each situation. And I pray that you would help Jen with her health tonight. And any unspokens, anybody out there listening tonight who's struggling with something, we all struggle with all kinds of things, Lord. I pray that you would show yourself strong in each and every situation. Help us to focus on you, and help us to love you and serve you in a greater way. And we'll thank you for it, and we'll praise you for it. In Jesus Christ's name, amen. Amen.
All right.
Thank you all for watching.
I just am going to mention it even though we missed it, but Kay said pray for her son Matthew and his health problems. So even though we didn't do it, we'll put it on the list, and then you guys continue to pray for him too.
Writing it down, and I will pray for Matthew tonight. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, guys, we're going to head to bed. I'm barely keeping my eyes open. So you all have a good night, and Lord willing, we'll see you guys next week, next Thursday.
And is my ending.
Let us know if you have any questions.
That's it.
That's
If we've said something tonight that got your mind going, or something that you would like to ask on this topic or another topic, please, at the conclusion of this video, in the comments, just you can comment there or anywhere that you can find us on social media. We're all over the place, especially you. So please, just like I said, to keep those lines of communication open. And maybe, perhaps, if somebody asks something, we can discuss it next week. Next week on the Q&A. Because at the moment, as far as I can gather,
We don't have any.
we have nothing to talk about next week. Nothing. So we need something.
I'm sure the Lord will provide.
Yeah, so we talked about, I guess last week we talked about singles. This week, marriage. Where are we going from there?
Who knows?
So anyway, it's open. So anything. Anyway, thank you all for
I'm
joining.
dragging him off.
Yeah. I had a late nap.
You
I'm
guys
ready to go. I'm ready to
no,
go.
he's not. He's going to bed. You guys have a good
Stay
night.
tuned. The second live event's coming. I'll be by myself. No, I'm just kidding.